What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Monte Poker episode 26. My apologies for the not typical intro. There was some poor planning by us this week, so I didn't get to shoot my intro as per usual, and I was minutes away from exporting this video without realizing that I did not have an intro. So this is our intro. Welcome to our poker channel. We try to play poker once or twice a week, take the highlights from said sessions, and then compile it into a beautiful, entertaining video for you all to watch at home from the comfort of your couches. Thank you for tuning in, and without further ado, I bring to you the action city known as Outlaws. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting off strong. The first of 3 sessions that we are going to be reviewing today. This one is on 526. We bought in for 300, have a little bit less than our starting stack when we look down at an absolute premium, 2 red kings. Well, one's going to be blue now because we updated our overlay to 4 colors, make it a little bit easier for you guys to keep up with the action based on a viewer's recommendation. But let's jump back into the poker. I raised the $20 under the gun. We get 4 callers. We go off to this flop 4 ways, $84 in the middle, and the flop comes 787 with 2 diamonds. I decided to continue here for $40. This is a really wet board, but we still have a strong hand, and unless somebody has a 7 or pocket 8s, we're probably beating a lot of the other players' holdings. We do end up getting 1 caller. Unfortunately, this gentleman is somebody that is typically on the tighter side, so I do expect him to be making this call with a 7 here. Maybe a hand like 6-7, 7-8 would obviously have a full house, but that's a bit unlikely. 7-9 suited or maybe a 7 suited would also be possible here, but he could potentially have a hand like 9-10 suited or maybe 5-6 suited, or even just a pair of 8s and he doesn't believe us. So when this turn comes the 5 of diamonds, I think it's a better card for me than it is for him. So I do decide to go all in here. Normally I'd like to put in a pot size bet and see where we're at, but since I have less than $200 in my stack, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to bet 100 on the turn and leave less than 100 for the river. Makes a lot more sense to just get all the money in now. We don't get snap called, so that's a pretty good sign for us. I don't think our opponent is thinking about calling with a draw at this point. I think he's debating whether or not his current hand is good, and eventually he decided that his hand is good enough to see a river with, which is a bit concerning, but all those concerns are immediately relieved when we bink the 2 of diamonds on the river, giving us the king high flush. I show our hand. Our opponent does not look happy about it, which often means that we're good. He throws his cards into the middle. We hand the chips over to the dealer to get a count, and I'm happy to scoop this $484 pot. A few hours go by before we look down at anything playable. We eventually see a pair of 7s in our hand, and I decide to go a bit bigger than normal here. I go for a bet sizing of $40, trying to act like I have a bigger pair than I actually do to thin the field out a little bit. We end up getting 1 customer, an opponent that plays a very wide range, which is not ideal for our current hand because he's going to hit a lot of the time. $84 in the middle, and we go out to a board that comes 5-9-5 rainbow. I just mentioned that our opponent has a very wide range, but since I raised to $40 pre-flop, I'm expecting him to have a decent hand more often than not. I decide to fire for a 3/4 pot size bet here of $60. Our opponent thinks it over for quite a bit, but eventually does end up making the call. Playing for $204, we go off to this turn, which brings us a 4 of diamonds. Our opponent snap jams, I snap call. I definitely think this is just a fold. We're losing to the 5, we're losing to the 9s. There's absolutely no reason for us to have called in this situation. I think I was just tilted that we got called by something weird and our opponent beat us when we had the better hand pre-flop. Should have been able to let it go, but I think the fact that we had only played 2 or 3 hands since we got here 3 hours ago factored into this a little bit. Not saying that makes it okay, but just giving you guys the full details as to why I made this decision at that time, even though I knew it was a bad call. 404 in the middle, we go off to the river, which comes a king of diamonds. Our opponent shows us 10-5 suited, so he had 3 of a kind that was crushing our pocket 7s. We pay our man off and kick ourselves for making that stupid call. Anyhow, enough of that. Feel free to roast me in the comments. Moving on to the next hand. We played another hour before we ended this session, and we looked down at pocket jacks at 12 o'clock at night. We are currently on the big blind with a little over 350 in our stack. We ended up losing a little bit more money, so so I rebought for 200 and some change. So we're in for a little under $600 at this point. When the action gets back to me, there were 6 players trying to limp into this pot. We're not going to let that happen. I decided to raise to $25, hoping to lose a couple players, but then the player immediately to my left decides to call. Margot, which then entices a few more customers to come along. So our raise didn't work out very well. We ended up getting 5 customers, which is mostly my fault. I should have raised a bit bigger pre-flop, made it 35, 40, maybe even $50 to try to thin out the field a little bit, but we can't do anything about that now. We're going off to this flop 6 ways, 153 in the middle, and the board runs out Jack, Ace, King, Rainbow. We flop bottom set, absolutely great for us. Yes, there's a potential straight out there, but there's also a lot of 2-pair or single pair with straight draw holdings that are in there as well. I decided to continue for $100 here. We get snapped off by Margot, which is not good. I don't think she's calling here unless she has the straight already made. I don't think she has a set, because if she had aces or kings, she would have re-raised us pre-flop and just gone all in herself. But with a hand like ace king, I feel like she also would have just jammed pre-flop, and we have removal to ace jack. So I'm expecting to see queen 10 a lot of the time here. Unfortunately, players are folding left and right. The action gets back to the small blind, and I'm really hoping that he puts the money in so that we can play for a side pot here and I can hopefully minimize my losses. Eventually he does end up folding. Luckily I have more money than Margot does already in the middle, so we get some money back here. She flips over her cards early and shows us that she flopped the nuts. The 9 of clubs changes nothing on the turn, and then the ace of spades on the river gives us the full house. She had us in rough shape on the flop, but luckily we got there on the river. Make sure to tell her she should have played it better in the comments. Anyhow, this brings this session to a close. I'll give you guys the quick stats before we move on to the next session. Bought in for 520, cashed out for 560, so we only profited $40 on this session, unfortunately. Got here at 8 o'clock and left at around 12:16. Nothing impressive, but overall better than a loss. And with that, we go over to the next session, which occurs 5:27 on a Saturday. It is now 2:55 p.m., so we can come a bit earlier in the day because it is the weekend. Games here at Outlaws typically start at 2 p.m., so it still started off a bit small and slow. We look down at King Jack offsuit. We're playing 7-handed, so I decide this hand is good enough to open to $10. We get raised to $30 by Anthony, the general manager here at Outlaws. Pretty solid player, and he likes to play big pots. 64 in the middle, and we go to this flop that comes King 3 with 2 hearts. We flop trips, and to make matters even better, Anthony fires for $20. We call the $20, and then we turn quads. What an absolutely insane run out. I don't know how we're going to get more value here. Not sure what Anthony was betting on the flop. Couldn't be a king because we have all of them accounted for. I checked the action over as soon as the turn hit the board. Anthony didn't realize it, asked the dealer if I had already checked. He checks it back, so we're off to this river with 94 in the middle, and it comes the 4 of clubs. At this point, I don't want to risk the action going check here on the river, so it's time to go for some value. I think going for about 3/4 to a full pot size bet would be a good amount, either $75 or $100. I've been pretty timid this whole hand, so firing a bet sizing like this almost makes it look like I'm trying to steal it with a hand like ace high. So our opponent may potentially call with any sort of pocket pair, or maybe even a hand like ace queen if he doesn't believe us. So for all those reasons, we do decide to fire here for $75, and our opponent doesn't immediately fold, which is great news. Seems like we picked a pretty good sizing here if our opponent is considering putting in the call. And as he grabs his chips, I realize he's getting chips to raise. What an absolute dream spot. We're sitting here with the freaking Nutter Butters, and our opponent just min clicked us. I think our opponent is trying to tell us that he has a pretty good hand. I doubt he's trying to get us to fold with just a min raise, so we're gonna put stacks in and play for all of it. Don't think my boy Anthony is too thrilled to be in this spot, but we do get a chuckle out of him with a head shake. I think he might actually have a pretty decent hand and might just have to pay us off here. He does mull it over for quite a bit before eventually asking for the count. He wants to know how much more it would be for him to call, so the dealer takes out the 150 that is already owed to the pot and then lets him know that it's an additional $203 to make the call. This is a really good sign for us us, typically players don't ask for a count on the river unless they're really debating putting in a call. But this is when Anthony shows us that he's the most disgusting human being on the planet. He ends up folding pocket aces face up.
Got it.
Wow.
Good fold.
Soul red. That was a soul red. Look at that.
Is it freaking Daniel Negreanu sitting at my table, man? How the heck does he fold the second nuts? To all my newer players, this is literally the best possible hand he could have had in this situation besides having the king himself. He had a full house with kings full of aces. Absolutely insane read by my man Anthony. General manager over here at Outlaws is not only action, but he's also a freaking disgusting individual and will read your soul if given the opportunity. That was a sick hand. We have plenty more left in store for you guys, so let's jump over to the next one. This hand needs a bit of an introduction and some context. My man Eric on the other end of the table was called over to the PLO game, so he was about to get up. He decided to straddle for $100 and was trying to egg on the table to call him blind. I told him he was crazy and laughed about it because $100 straddle in a 1-3 game is absolutely ridiculous. But since I had already made a couple $100 this session and I was only in for a couple hundred, I told them that if the action folded over to me, I would call his $100 blind. So that's where we're at now, and I'll let the clip roll from here.
No, he didn't. 101. 101. 101.
Oh, sorry, I made it more. It was way more.
Did you look? No. I'm gonna respect that. Let's flip one. Flip one.
Go.
Okay, let's make it 100 and then we'll run it. 100 more. I'm gonna raise 100 and then I don't have to worry about it.
Raise
You
it
up for
up.
that?
101.
Okay.
All right, cool.
101.
That's it.
Right?
Just
No,
one.
just 100.
Oh,
Left or right? Left or right? This one?
yes. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I like it. I like it. Don't give him anything. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's the 7. There's the 7.
Queen. Oh, I need to get something in there.
Nothing. No. No. Oh my God. Oh, you kidding me?
Love the nuts.
Wow.
Gross.
Yes, that was gross.
Hold on. Let me get you. Let me get you in there.
That was gross. I feel so bad at
Where to
that.
the camera?
So I never really do this sort of thing, but I don't know. We're feeling a bit spicy today. Decided to just have a straight gamble. Eric always gives us a ton of action, so I don't mind giving him some action. And since neither of us had looked at our hands, it was pretty fair. I honestly thought I had it once we had hit that 7 on the turn. Somehow my man with the $100 straddle on the button wakes up with ace king and just flops us straight. And for my newer players that are non-believing and thinks we might have gotten scammed by Eric, straddling means you put the money out before the cards are even dealt, so there was literally no way for him to know what his hand was. Nice hand, buddy. Go run that up on PLO. A few minutes go by and we look down at ace queen offsuit under the gun. I decide to raise to about $25 here since we are in early position and I don't want too many people to call behind us. We do end up getting 2 customers, so we go 3 ways to this flop with 82 in the middle. The board runs out jack 3 king with 2 hearts. We have absolutely nothing on this board besides ace high. I guess we could hit a 10 for a straight, but that's unlikely. But when Anthony leads out here for $35, for some reason, I don't feel like he has a hand and he might just be trying to steal this with air. So when he bets 35, I quickly put in the call just with ace high to see what he does on the turn. If our opponent checks it to us, we might be able to steal it with a bet. And the turn comes an absolute dream card. We bink the straight with the 10 of clubs. This is super sneaky because I don't expect him to believe that we called with just a gut shot on the turn, and we currently have the nuts. To make things even better, he decides to bet again for $90. I contemplated raising in this situation, and given the fact that there were 2 different flush draws on the board, I probably should have. But given how the action went on the turn, I thought Anthony probably had a pretty decent hand and figured that he'd continue betting on the river. What I failed to consider was that if a heart or a club gets there, he'll probably slow down and will lose some value. So I think the right play is raising here. unfortunately that's not what we did. So we're off to the last card with 332 in the middle, and it comes out the 6 of spades. We were super fortunate that no scare cards hit the river. This card, for all intents and purposes, is in fact a brick and does not change anything on this board. And to make things even better, Anthony decides to fire here for 125. I mull it over for a bit and I'm contemplating how much we can raise here and get called. He only bet about 1/3 of the pot, so I don't imagine he has a huge hand, so I don't want to scare him away. I decide to bet about 2/3 of the pot here for 300, making it 175 more for him to call. I think a lot of single pair hands with a good kicker that are blocking the straight would call this bet sizing. I think a hand like 2-pair also has to put in the call for this amount. Anthony takes his time thinking it over, but eventually does elect to put in the call. We flip over our hand, it's obviously good, and we get the old nice hand from our boy. And with that, we scoop another good sized pot. And just like that, we have another good sized pot coming our way. All right, ladies and gents, the next hand of interest brings us a little Jack 8 suited action. Normally, I don't like to play this hand out of position, but like I said earlier, we are being a bit more gambly than normal. Fortunately for us, we end up flopping top 2 on this 3-way board. We got in for cheap on the flop, check the action over to the pre-flop aggressor, and that's when he decides to bet $30. One player puts in the call right behind him, and this board is far too wet for me to just flat call here. There's a straight draw, a flush draw, and a potential straight already out there, so I decide to raise to $80 here, but our opponent is having none of it. He decides to jam for the rest of his stack, which honestly isn't much more than what I already have out there. He makes it $100 even. The player behind him thinks it over for a little bit longer, but does eventually call the additional $70. And when the action gets back to me, I'm obviously not gonna fold for $20 more. So we put in the call. There's still action on the side between me and the player remaining in the hand. So when the turn comes the 8 of spades, I am absolutely ecstatic. We fill up and catch our full house. When I look over at the opponent remaining in the hand, she only has a little over $100 left, so I decide to bet 100 and she somehow finds the fold. I flip over our full house and take my $100 back. The river comes a king of diamonds and our opponent shows ace jack. He flopped top pair, top kicker, and turned the nut flush draw, but unfortunately, even his flush would have been no good. And that, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our session here. I mentioned at the start of the video that I had 3 sessions for you guys. Unfortunately, I only got through 2 of them, and the video got kind of long. I was also completely slammed this week. It is currently Friday at 11:30 at night, and I was supposed to post this video at 6 a.m. this morning, so we're just gonna cut it short. Post it tomorrow, Saturday at 6:30 instead, and we'll save the 10 remaining hands for next week's video instead. Let's go over the quick bankroll summary to close this video out. All right, so we bought in for 720, cashed out 1293 for a total profit of 573, and the session was played from 1:57 until 6:39. Not a bad session overall. We bought in for a couple hundred the first time, played a little wild and reckless, and gambled a little bit away. Then we reeled it back in and ended up making a almost $600 profit on the night. Can't complain about that. Thank you guys for checking out the video. As per usual, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to help us grow, and good luck on the felt.